رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، قال إمام الباقر عليه السلام: ما دخل قلب أمري شيء من الكبر إلا نقص من عقله مثله ما دخل من ذلك. صلوات. In the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful. Tonight's topic, inshallah, is a brief biography of one of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. In the previous nights, we had the opportunity to delve into the life of one of the underrepresented Imams, or let's say under-talked about Imams, which was Imam al-Hasan. And then in the other night, we talked about Imam Sajjad Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, and the lessons that we could learn from the life of this Imam. Tonight, I want to shift it to the one that comes after Zain al-Abidin, which is none other than Imam Muhammad al Baqer alayhi salam. When we look at Imam al Baqer alayhi salam, very much one can argue that his life is very similar in terms of underrepresentation, like Imam al-Hasan and Imam Zain al-Abidin. Imam Ali alayhi salam, you all hear about his merits, the battles that he participated in, the ayahs that was revealed in his name. Imam al-Hussein, mashallah, we commemorate his martyrdom every year, Muharram, Ashura. There's a lot of spotlight for Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, again, steals the spotlight. Why? Because he is the Ra'is of our madhab. He is the master of our school of thought. That's why we call ourselves Ja'far, because we take our jurisprudence from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, our sixth Imam. So in that sense, he does steal the spotlight. We can't get to the other Imams, of course, because we don't have enough time for the nights. But tonight, inshallah, we'll look at the life of Imam al Baqer and see what type of lessons this blessed man left behind. Imam al Baqer alayhi salam is responsible for many things when it comes to the religion of Islam, particularly how he disseminates knowledge and how he leaves the legacy of knowledge behind. Now, many of the spotlight that I mentioned is put forward onto the son, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And there's a lot of talk about Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. But little do we find is that the teacher of the Ra'is of our madhab is none other than his father, Imam al Baqer, which does not get talked about enough. Because Imam al-Sadiq would say that the only person or the greatest teacher that I studied under was my father, Imam al Baqer. So when we look at the legacy of Imam al-Sadiq, it automatically goes back to Imam al Baqer alayhi salam. Now, Imam al Baqer, to give a brief biography, he was distinguished with an honor that the other Imams did not get. And this is having both of his lineage go back to Imams. What do I mean? You see, Imam al Baqer is the only Imam where his mother is the daughter of an Imam, and his father is the son of an Imam. His mother is Fatima bint al-Hasan, the daughter of Imam al-Hasan. And his father is Ali Sajjad Zain al-Abidin, the son of Imam al-Hussein. So, the son of Imam al-Hussein marries the daughter of Imam al-Hasan. And you have Muhammad al Baqer. So this is an honor that Allah gave Imam al Baqer through the lineage of Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Imam al Baqer, there is very little known about his life. When we look at Imam al Baqer, Many of us know very little about Imam al Baqer. But what if I told you Imam al Baqer was there at Karbala? There is not much that is talked about Imam al Baqer, but he is there at Karbala. We talk about Imam Hussein, we talk about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, we talk about Ali al-Akbar, we talk about Ali al-Asghar, Qasim. These are all at Karbala. But not a single mention is mentioned about Imam al Baqer. Clearly Imam al Baqer is at Karbala. He's 3 years old in Karbala. Same age as, let's say, Ruqayya. That same Ruqayya that ends up passing away in Sham. Imam al Baqer is amongst the captives, and one of his first stories of his knowledge being spoken about is when he is in Sham. Imam Zain al-Abidin in Sham had his own khutbah. Lady Zainab had her own khutbah. But Imam al Baqer also had his own khutbah at the age of 3 in front of Yazid. When Yazid had brought the captives into his palace, Zainab, Zain al-Abidin, all of them in front of him. And he had a large gathering and a crowd around him to make the people of Sham know that this is what's happening here today. I've got a bunch of captives here with me. So he looked at the women and he said, we're going to sell them off as slave girls. And for the men, we are going to kill them. When he made such a statement, Imam al Baqer, a 3-year-old, speaks out. A 3-year-old in front of the Caliph of the Muslims at that time speaks out. He says, "Oh Yazid, what is this duty or announcement that you've made?" And he says, "Oh Yazid, when Musa, the prophet of God, and his people was caught and they were taken in front of Pharaoh had the decency of asking his people for the opinion of what they should do to Musa. And what happened? They ended up letting the people of Moses go. They said, let them go and let them live far away. But you, O Yazid, do not have the decency to give an option to the very man to the children of the very man who brought the religion to you." So Imam al Baqer is trying to hide that. Listen, we are Ahl Baytun Nubuwa. We are the family of the Prophet. But you do not have the decency to give us that option like Pharaoh had. If you're compared to Pharaoh, that means you're worse than arrogant. Because Pharaoh in the Quran is one of the most arrogant human beings that can ever live on the face of this planet. He considered himself God. "Ana rabbukum al-a'la." I am your God, he used to say. And he would say it until the Nile was split and it was about to crash on him, and then he said, "I believe," but that was too late. That's how arrogant Pharaoh was. So if you're being compared to Pharaoh and saying, listen, Pharaoh had more decency than you, then that goes to show you what the character of Yazid was. The point is, Imam al Baqer at the age of 3 says such lines to the caliph of that time, to the king of that time. And Yazid looked around and he said, "Who said that?" And everybody pointed to that 3-year-old. This 3-year-old says it. Now Yazid wanted to slap the young boy, but he thought that if I do it in front of all these people, it's an act of cowardice. So he ignored it. Anyway, so that was the first and early stage where Imam al Baqer shows his knowledge. And it goes to show you that Imam al Baqer is a very special individual. He is the one, until there's a hadith that is narrated, he is the one where Rasulullah said to his companion, "O Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, I want you to send my salams to Muhammad al Baqer." Imam al Baqer was not alive when the Holy Prophet was alive. He had not been born. But Rasulullah makes a prophecy. He says to his companion, Jabir bin Abdullah, he says, "O Jabir, when you see Muhammad al Baqer, I want you to send my salams to him." Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari at that time was one of the oldest surviving companions of the Prophet. The books say he was about 80 to 90 years old at that time. 90-year-old man, to the extent he had gone blind. He was too old and he had gone blind. Jabir's father, Abdullah al-Ansari, had died in the Battle of Uhud. And he was one of the individuals Just like Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet, where Hind had cut open his body and taken out the liver and eaten the liver, Jabir's father's body was done the same thing. His body was cut up and it was mutilated. Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari is the one who lived during the companionship of Rasulullah, a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a companion of Imam al-Hasan, a companion of Imam al-Hussein, a companion of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and then a companion of Imam al Baqer. Almost 5 generations, he sees the family of the Prophet, including the Prophet himself. So Imam al Baqer, when Rasulullah is saying, I want you to send my salams, it goes to show you that, listen, the person who the Prophet sends his salam to must be a very special person. And he said, send my salams to al Baqer. Why? Because he is the one who splits knowledge completely. Baqir is his title. It's not his real name. Imam's real name is Muhammad, the son of Ali. Muhammad ibn Ali, and his title is al Baqir. Now, like I said, the prophecy was made to Jabir bin Abdullah and he was blind. So what he would do when he heard this hadith of the Prophet, he would sit in Masjid al-Nabi. He would sit in front of the mosque of the Prophet and every day he would ask, where is al Baqir? Where is al Baqir? The man was blind and he was just asking the same question. When the people would walk past him, they'd be like, he's 90 years old, he's blind, he's surely lost it now. There's no one called Baqir. Jabir bin Abdullah has gone crazy. He's gone insane. Until a particular day, Imam Zayn al-Abidin takes the hand of a young boy and he brings it to Jabir. Jabir is blind, but he senses something. Because when you're blind, your other senses become stronger to compensate for your blindness. So he's blind and he senses and he says, I hear the footsteps of Rasulullah coming towards me. He says, I hear the footsteps of Rasulullah coming towards me. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, who is this boy? Imam Sajjad says, this is the one who is known as al Baqer. So what Jabir does is he takes Imam al Baqer, places him on his lap and he says, oh al Baqer, allow me to kiss your hands and to kiss your feet. For you are the one the Holy Prophet told me to send my salams to. This is how great Imam al Baqer is. Now why was he called al Baqer? The one who splits knowledge. Baqir comes from the word Baqr. Baqr refers to one when you split it open. A farmer who splits open the earth, or let's say the soil, in order to harvest his crops, so to plant his seeds, that's known as Baqr. So Imam is the one who disseminates or splits knowledge. And I'll give you some examples tonight, inshallah. That's why he's called al Baqir al-Ulum, the one who splits the sciences, the one who splits the knowledge. Imam al Baqir alayhi salam, when he was young, just like the youth sitting here tonight, he would be a subject to bullies as well. So he would get bullied. The kids around him used to call him Baqara. Baqara means what? Cow. His name was al Baqir. They used to say, Baqara, come here. Baqara, come here. They used to mock the Imam and they'd say, cow, come here. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2 of the Holy Quran is known as the Surah of the cow. So the kids around used to call him Baqarah. Did Imam retaliate? No, he was patient. They used to make fun of him. But Imam replied with patience. Now, during the life of the Imam, we don't have enough time, but I'm trying to keep it as short as possible. During the time of the Imam, he was very young at the time of Karbala, but when he grew up is where the plant begins to flourish. The flower begins to flourish. And this is where Imam al Baqer shows his greatest potential. Imam al Baqer lived under good people and bad people. In the time of Imam al Baqer, it was the Umayyads who used to rule the Islamic world, the Umayyad Caliphates, which started from Muawiyah up until 50 to 80 years, until they got overthrown by the Abbas. The few bad people that Imam al Baqer had to live under were the examples of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. I gave his example a few nights ago when he was the one who killed the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Hajjaj was a ruthless ruler. He, on the days of Eid al-Adha, we say Eid al-Qurban. Eid al-Qurban, you're meant to sacrifice because Qurbani is to sacrifice. So he would ask the people, what do you guys sacrifice? And they'd say, we sacrifice sheep or we sacrifice cattle, let's say. He'd say, very well, bring everyone called Ali, Hassan, Hussein, let's sacrifice them. This is how much hatred he had for the family of the Prophet. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. He was the one who killed Kumail ibn Ziyad. Every Thursday night we read Dua Kumail. It was revealed in honor of Kumail bin Ziyad. The very Kumail bin Ziyad is killed by Hajjaj. The servant of Imam Ali, Qambar, was also killed by this Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Sa'id ibn al-Jubair, the one that I talked about, the story of the Quran a few nights ago, was also killed by this Hajjaj. Ruthless ruler that Imam al Baqer had to live under. Now, did he live under good people as well, or let's say somewhat good people? Yes, he did. Because what was happening is at that time, Banu Umayyah, the people who were in charge of the Muslim empire, they cared more about the wealth of the world, money, power, women. Imam looked at this situation and said, listen, they're distracted with the worldly desires. Why don't I use this opportunity to teach the message of Rasulullah and the traditions of Rasulullah? And he is the one who opened the University of the Ja'fari. We get our madhab from Imam al-Sadiq. But in reality, the foundation that was set by Imam al Baqer, his father. He had many students and he had many scholars who would come to debate him. In his time, there were many confusions. There were many schools that were formed. Schools of thought, of course. One school known as the Murji'iyya, they would say that, listen, they had the opinion that, look, if you drink alcohol, you're not a bad human being because I don't know what's in your heart. Hold on a minute, he's just drank alcohol. No, they would say that, listen, if you drink alcohol, it's not bad because I don't know what's in your heart. I remember there was a Maulana, he was asked, Shaykh, I have a fiqhi question from you. Listen, I happen to do ghaiba. I backbite. And I happen to, for example, be rude to my friends or my parents. But I have a clean heart. I don't pray, but I have a clean heart. He said, Shaykh, what happens to me on the Day of Judgment? The Shaykh gave a very sarcastic reply. He said, look, on the Day of Judgment, God would take your heart out, take it to heaven, the rest of your body will go to hell. That's a sarcastic way of saying, listen, you have to improve yourself. So when we look at Imam al Baqer, there are many schools that are formed at that time. But Imam al Baqer, his school is a school that engages in different types of knowledge. He teaches jurisprudence, he teaches geography, he teaches the sciences, he teaches ethics, he teaches philosophy, he teaches, for example, Greek mysticism. Because Imam al Baqer was trying to highlight that, listen, Islam is not just about Islamic knowledge. There's nothing wrong with learning that which is outside the religion of Islam. If it gets you more knowledgeable and it makes you more understand reality better, what's so bad about it? What's the harm? Go and study your sciences, go and study your mathematics, go and study your chemistry, your physics. It shouldn't be like, I'm going to only study fiqh, ahkam, let's say, theology and history. This is one of the legacies of Imam al Baqer. And so, as I said, many people would engage with Imam al Baqer on different issues because he was given the title Baqir al-Ulum, the one who splits knowledge. Now, when you're given that title, people are going to put it to the test. They're going to say, you're the one who splits knowledge? All right, let's test you out. One man came to him, he said, oh Imam, do you believe that Shaitan is the enemy of the prophets? Imam said, yes. He said, have they had any conversations with the prophets? Imam said, yes. He said, which conversation? Imam said, Shaitan had a conversation with Prophet Noah in the Bible. And he said to him, Shaitan actually thanked Noah. He said, look, I want to thank you. Why? Because you made a prayer to God to remove the oppressors in your lifetime. And therefore, there's not much work for me because I, as shaitan, have to misguide people for them to be oppressive. But you already made a dua and Allah removed all the oppressors. So there's no work for me to do. So for that reason, I thank you. And therefore, I want to pay you back. Prophet Nuh said, how do you want to pay me back? He said, I'm going to give you 3 advices. Or I'm going to make you show of 3 things. The first point is that, look, I want you to know there are 3 places I am always present. The first one is when you are angry. In moments of your anger, I am always there to push you to become more angry, to retaliate. Have you noticed sometimes where you're mad, something doesn't work out your way, and there's this voice inside your head saying, go on, hit the guy, smash him, he said that about you, or he said that about your mom. There's that voice inside you. That's shaitan speaking to you. He says, when you're angry, know that I am always there. Number 2, in charity, I'm always there as well. What do I mean? He says, when you're about to give charity, I'm the one holding your hand back. Should I give? Should I not give? Wait for people to give. I'll give tomorrow. These are all what we call waswas al-shaytan. الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس. The third one, he says, if you are in the company of the opposite gender, then I'm the third of the 3. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, these were during the times when he was under a bad Khalifa or bad leaders. Were there times where he was under good people? Yes. One notable figure was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He was an Umayyad Caliph, but he had certain stances that one can respect. Umar bin Abdul Aziz is the one who stopped the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen. During the time of Banu Umayyah, I want you to imagine, you are living in the Umayyad Caliphate. Friday morning, you go towards the mosque to listen to the khutbah of the Imam or the Shaykh or whoever is giving the khutbah. The first thing he begins with is, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, may Allah curse the son of Abu Talib. In other words, may Allah curse Imam Ali, is what they're saying. This idea of cursing was proposed by the Umayyad Caliphate. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz, when he was young, he didn't know it because he was brought up by the propaganda. He says, one day I was sitting with my Quran tutor or teacher. He says, I was sitting and either he could not get a word right or he had forgotten a piece of thing, and he, out of anger, he swore or he cursed. And he cursed Imam Ali specifically because at that time it had become a norm where you got angry, you would curse Ali. You got mad, you would curse Ali. That was the idea of Banu Umayyah. So he says, look, I got angry and I cursed Ali, and my teacher looked at me and he frowned at me. And I looked back at my teacher and I said, how dare you look at me? I'm the son of the Khalifa. You are my teacher, but I am the son of your Khalifa. How dare you look at me like that? And he said, my student, have you read the Quran that I've been teaching you? I said, yes, of course, you're my teacher. I know very well the Quran that you read to me. He said, my student, have I taught you about the soldiers of Badr? Those brave soldiers who gave their souls and those who fought for the way of God in the battle of Badr? He said, yes, you have. And then my teacher asked me, what's your opinion of them? Umar bin Abdul Aziz said, I have my highest respect for the soldiers of the battle of Badr. He said, what about the soldier who killed half the opposition on the battle of Badr? He said, it must be a great soldier. The teacher said, that soldier that killed half the opposition is the one you're cursing right now. That is Ali. Umar bin Abdul Aziz says, when I realized that this is what my teacher is teaching me, and that I was falling for the propaganda of the Umayyads, I said, listen, when I become Khalifa, when I grow up, I promise you I will stop that. I will not let Ali be cursed. And he did the exact same thing. He also used to say that when I was young, my father used to preach. And the other Khalifa, when he used to preach about every other individual, very good, strong oratory, confident when he speaks. But every time he gets to Ali, he begins to tremble. He stutters. And I used to ask him, Dad, why do you get stutter when you get to Ali's name? Every other Sahabi of the Prophet, very confident, mashallah, great oratory skills. He says, my son, if the people knew the merits of Ali, they would not have us people like us in power. It is through the hiddening or hiding the merits of Ali that Banu Umayyah was in caliphate. So these are some of the legacies of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He had a great relationship to an extent with Imam al Baqer alayhi salam. Imam al Baqer, when he engages with Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he comes to him and he says, Oh Muhammad ibn Ali, ibn Rasulullah, advise me, I want you to guide me. Listen, I've become Khalifa. What do you think I should do? Imam gives him 3 fantastic pieces of advice. He says, Oh Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the first advice I'll give you is that during celebrations, never forget halal and haram. No matter what the celebration is, do not forget halal and haram. Sometimes we get too happy, and whatever celebration it might be, then we forget Allah and the laws of jurisprudence. The second point, he says, when you become angry, do not forget halal and haram. We get angry and we curse. We swear at people. That's not allowed. Or sometimes we get angry and we swear at God. Something doesn't go away. God, why are you doing this to me? How could you think about doing this to me? Sometimes you lose a loved one and you begin to question the mercy of God. This is what Imam al Baqer is saying. Listen, if you become angry, do not forget halal and haram. It doesn't say don't become angry. Becoming angry is normal. It's okay. It's part of your emotional characteristics as a human being. But when you become angry, know your obligations of halal and haram. And the third one, he says, don't usurp the property of the people. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz says, which property? He says, the Umayyads took Fadak, which belonged to my mother Fatima. I want you to return it. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz said, I promise you, I will let it be returned to you. And he returned it. One of the worst leaders in the time of Imam al Baqer, and I'll conclude with this inshallah, was Hisham bin Abdul Malik. Hisham bin Abdul Malik was one who absolutely hated Imam al Baqer. He was the one who would get as many opportunities to try to humiliate Imam al Baqer. Because to him, he was the Khalifa and he was a stab to his ego. I am the leader of the Muslims, but people are respecting Muhammad ibn Ali more than me. Or I am the Khalifa of the Muslims, but people are saying Muhammad ibn Ali is more knowledgeable than me. So to him, it was a stab to his ego. So what he would do is he would try to humiliate Imam al Baqer. What would he do? One day, Hisham bin Abdul Malik was with an individual by the name of Nafi'. Nafi' was the servant of the second Khalifa, and he was one of the Khawarij. The Khawarij, Battle of Naharawan, are those who fought Imam Ali. The modern day ISIS that you see are the remnants of the Khawarij. What you see in ISIS and Al-Qaeda today is very much what you see in the Khawarij. This individual known as Nafi' was one of the Khawarij. He says, one day we were sitting and we see Muhammad ibn Ali al Baqer walk towards the Kaaba. Nafi' asked, who's that man? And Hisham bin Abdul Malik says, that is Muhammad ibn Ali. Nafi' says, I don't know that man. And he says, the people say he is the prophet of the people of Iraq. Nafi' says, is that the big praise that they give for this man? He says, yes, that's what they call him. They call him Baqir al-Ulum, the one who splits knowledge. Nafi' says, bring him to me, I'll teach him a lesson. So they bring. He says, Baqir, come here. Imam al Baqer approaches him. He says, I hear you are known as Baqir al-Ulum, the one who disseminates knowledge. Imam says, ask me. He says that, oh Baqir, are you knowledgeable? Are you learned? Imam says, I am not of the ignorant. Beautiful line. He doesn't say, yes, I am learned. He doesn't say arrogantly, yes, I am the knowledgeable one. Or I am... No. He says, I'm not ignorant. Simple. If you have a question to ask me, ask. Well, you claim to be Baqir al-Ulum. I have a few questions to ask you. It says, what's the difference between the years between Jesus and Muhammad? Imam al Baqer says, in your opinion 600, in my opinion 500. Nafi is thinking to himself, how does this guy know about my opinion? I haven't even said anything. In my opinion 600, in his opinion 500? He says, anyway, what about where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that Rasulullah was asked that you ask the prophets that come before you about whether the people disbelieved or not. He says, how is that possible when the prophets that came before Muhammad already passed away? So they were already dead during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How is that possible? Imam al Baqer said, no. On the night of Mi'raj, Rasulullah went to the heavens and he led all the prophets in prayer. And he turned around and he said, did I tell you or did you tell your people to believe in anyone other than God? And they said, no, O Messenger of God, we told them to believe in one God and we told them to follow you as their prophet as well. Nafi, his question answered. Nafi then turned around and said, you're good. I like that. You're good. Where's God? Where's God? Imam al Baqer says, show me where he isn't, I'll show you where he is. Show me where God isn't, I'll show you where he is. Nafi says, okay. Where did God come about? Or where is God? He said, show me where he isn't and I'll show you where he is. And then he asks, when did God come about? From where to when? Imam al Baqer says, show me when he was not and I'll show you when he came about. Then Imam al Baqer, to finish off the argument, he does something which we call finish him. If you played Mortal Kombat, finish him. So Imam al Baqer finishes him. He says, listen, you Na'fal, I've heard you are from the Khawarij. Is that true? And he said, yes. He said, I want to ask you, do you agree with the Khawarij that fought Ali at Nahrawan? And you can only give me two answers. Either of that answer is going to go against you. Do you agree with the Khawarij that fought Ali at Nahrawan? If you disagree, then you're a disbeliever. Because anyone who fights the Khalifa of their time is a kafir. If you agree or if you disagree, then you're still a disbeliever because you were one of them who fought Ali. So which one are you? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Na'fal after that day said, I'm never going to debate this man whatsoever. That's Na'fal. Another scholar came to ask him, he said, oh, Muhammad al Baqer, which fast are you allowed to drink and eat? Because generally when a person fasts, you're not allowed to eat and drink. So he says, which one was the fast where an individual was allowed to drink and eat? Imam al Baqer said, the fast of Lady Maryam, when it refers to the silence that she took. She was allowed to drink, but her fast related to her silence. He said, okay, when was a quarter of humanity killed? Imam said a quarter of humanity was killed when Qabil killed his brother Habil. He said, what increases and never decreases? Imam said the water in the oceans. He says, what decreases and never increases? He said, your age. And then he provides a specific one that only Baqir al-Ulum can answer. He says, very well, I've got one final question for you. Which twins in history were born on the same day and died on the same day, but one was 50 years old and another was 150? You've got to be Baqir al-Ulum to answer such a question. Imam al Baqer, what does he say? He says, it's easy. The answer is Prophet Uzair and his brother Aziz. Prophet Uzair asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do you raise the dead? How do you make alive the dead? So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did was when both of the twins were 30 years old, Allah allowed Prophet Uzair to die. And he died for 100 years. When he died for 100 years, Allah raised him up again. And after that 100 years, he lived for another 20 years. His brother ended up being 50, was Uzair being 150. When the man got that answer, he said, I bear witness that there is no one like Muhammad ibn Baqer, Muhammad al Baqer. You are truly the one who disseminates knowledge. You are truly the one who says, I am the Khalifa of the Prophets. Not the one that is sitting on the throne of Bani Umayyah. And to finally conclude, Imam al Baqer, did he only serve in his life through his knowledge? No. There was much more than knowledge. Imam al Baqer one day, and this is my final remark inshallah, one day in the heat of Medina, one man says, I saw in the heat of Medina, nobody's outside. I see one man in the middle of the scorching sun, he's digging. He's digging. I go out, I can't see, I get closer, I see it's Muhammad al Baqer. And I wonder to myself, this, the son of the messenger of God, is one who chases the dunya? I went to him and said, oh Muhammad al Baqer, are you truly the one outside chasing the dunya? Imam answered to me, how am I chasing the dunya? He said, look, everybody's inside and you're here chasing the dunya, you're working in this heat. Imam said, what's wrong with me working in this heat? If I want to earn a lively or a living for myself, and it is in halal, it is through my hard work and my zahmat in our language, then what's the issue? Furthermore, if I die in this state, I am one who is blessed by God, for I am worshipping God. When a person goes to work and earns hard-earned money, that in itself is worship. When you work and you earn good, halal money, that's worship of God. Imam al Baqer says, look, just because I'm working doesn't mean I'm chasing dunya. In fact, I'm actually worshipping God. So Imam al Baqer left many legacies, either through his work or through his knowledge. May Allah allow us to be those who replicate and learn lessons from his life. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.